and gentlemen, let me invite guests and panelists, which are Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany. Please come to join us. Yes. Annalena Baerbock. Please, Dmytro Kuleba. Zbigniew Rau. Joseph Borrell sadly needs to travel back to sorry. Perfect. And Bobke, please join us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me start with very little personal perspective, because we have just concluded informal meeting of Ministers of Foreign Affairs of the EU, and we had an informal lunch with Ministers of Associated Trial to the EU, which Ukraine and Dmytro was one of those guests. And these 2 days here in Prague, we had very open and frank debate on how to tackle with future progress. And it was demonstrated on the issue of visas, issuing touristic visas, and it's a complex matter. And we agree that we need to do action. We sometimes differ in our answers. But in the end of the day, we are ready to provide that answer and move on. And my perspective is that this is sometimes quite a heated debate. So then to switch into the conference mode and to discuss matter in broader scope demands a little bit of concentration. But thank you very much, all of you guests, for participating in this conference. This conference has one vision, and this vision is to bring Ukraine into the EU. We know it won't be easy. We know it won't happen overnight. It may take years, maybe, I don't know. It may take, we see the other enlargement processes being sometimes stuck in different kind of negotiations and processes. My thesis, my personal thesis is that the political alignment is absolute key. Once we agree politically, we can find way, and the rest of that will be matter of processes. And yes, we have to agree on rule of law, we have to agree on many things, and those chapters definitely include that. But in the very beginning, there needs to be political alignment. And of course, we are living in an extraordinary times. You face onslaught, you face war, something which we don't want to imagine half a year ago. And yes, we have to ask ourselves, what can we do for Ukraine to survive this onslaught? What can we do for Europe to protect its architecture of security, which we build it? We built that security architecture with Soviet Union. The Helsinki Act, OCEC was founded with agreement of Soviet Union when we again stated that borders won't be changed by force. So thank you very much again for participation, and I'll start with questions. Dmytro, when will you win the war? And what do you need to do to support you?
We definitely will win the war.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter how much time it takes. And it is true that some emphasize the point that this is the war of attrition, it may last, it's too long, we cannot afford it. I think when we defend our lifestyle, our principles, our values, we have to fight as long as it is needed until we prevail. And when Putin, on the 24th of February, Putin did not attack only Ukraine. He attacked the West as a concept. and he attacked every household here in Europe, in North America, or in Asia, where countries share the same principles and values. The only difference is that while he attacked Ukraine with missiles and tanks, he attacked Europeans and others with energy crisis, with inflation, with propaganda. And the best Putin wants to achieve is to see doubts. Doubts in victory, doubts in our ability to defend what we stand for. Doubts are like erosion. They erode confidence, they erode commitment, and we have to come to a very simple conclusion. You know, there are discussions about how this war will end. I think, you know, there is a saying, perception becomes reality. If we set ourselves a goal that the end of this war will be the victory of Ukraine, and the victory of Ukraine means the restoration of its territorial integrity and the securing its right to decide its own future, as every democratic nation does, that perception will become a reality. That perception will identify our moves, our decisions, and it will become a reality. One thing that follows up directly from the conversation that we had on visas, because visas is just a big topic now, so let's take it as an example. On our way to victory, we will always be facing difficult choices. And we will always be tempted to take half measures, to strike balances, to take half measures against the aggressor. But the truth, the sad truth, is that the age of peace in Europe is over. And the age of half measures is over too. We have to be resolved, we have to be committed. Yes, we have to be tough, but this is the only way how you win wars. Especially a war against a country like Russia, led by President Putin. So if I have to face a situation when I have to choose between a half measure on, for example, visas and a real measure and no measure, I will prefer a no measure. I will prefer to take more time to discuss, more time to find a solution that will introduce a real tough measure that will deliver. This is the policy that can take us to victory, and that will take us to victory. I don't know the calendar, the schedule, but I'm absolutely confident, and I want to assure you that this is not only my personal confidence, it's how people of Ukraine feel. We have to win this war, and we will win it.
Thank you, and we are with you. And thank you for advice how to do decisions in the EU.
As an incoming member, you know.
Annalena, what is the German vision for successful Ukraine? How would you define successful Ukraine?
Well, first of all, thanks for the invitation and good afternoon. But this is not a German vision, because what we are fighting for, what Ukraine is fighting for, is for the right every country has to define their own future by themselves. So it's not up to Germany, but I've been discussing with my friend Dimitro for a very long time now, because 6 months in a time of war seems like ages. And so I know what, not the vision, but what the future of Ukraine is, what Dimitro just said himself. And this is a free and peaceful Ukraine, like every other country in the world. And Ukraine has a right. And this is why we made very clear today at our informal council, but also with an input paper I gave together with my French colleague, making clear that we stand with Ukraine as long as they need us. And because we all agree on this, and this is not a sentence to applause for, because this is just a normal thing if you believe in the rule of law and in the freedom in the world, I would maybe give some controversy in the discussion, and I've listened to your speech, which I really valued, but I would disagree on one sentence you said of saying we shouldn't talk about maybe this war should go on for a longer time. Because if I give the promise as a politician, and luckily in democracy, it could be the chance that people disagree with me and they say in 4 years, well, you didn't tell us the truth. But if I give the promise to people in Ukraine, we stand with you as long as you need us, then I want to deliver, no matter what my German voters think, but I want to deliver to the people of Ukraine. And this is why, for me, it's important to be always very frank and clear. And this means every measure I'm taking, I have to be clear that this holds on as long as Ukraine needs me. And this is why I think it's so important that we have to be frank. Yes, everybody wishes from us that tomorrow the war stops, but in case tomorrow it wouldn't stop, I will be also there in 2 years' time. And then sometimes it sounds a bit difficult on the EU level, and this is also where we disagree sometimes on measures the European Union is taking, because every sanction package we have to prepare that it holds also for the next maybe 2 years. If we don't need it 2 years long, well, this is great. But if we would need it, it has to hold as long as Ukraine needs us. And we are facing now winter time where we will be challenged as democratic politicians. People will go on the street and say, we cannot pay our energy prices. And I will say, yes, I know, so we help you with social measures. But I don't want to say, okay, then we stop the sanctions against Russia. We will stand with Ukraine, and this means the sanction will stay also in wintertime, even if it gets really tough for politicians, and we have to find good solution all over Europe to balance the social effects, because this is the other part of this war. It's a hybrid war. The second strategy is to split our democracies, saying, okay, now the poor people are being left behind, and we have to give the answers. No, we stand in solidarity with everybody in our country as we stand with everybody in Ukraine.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Minister Zbigniew, Poland has a crucial role in supporting Ukraine in this war, and I think it is very much admired for it. Also looking at the pace you are procuring for your army, I think there's a clear it's a clear statement. How do you see security situation in Europe? But back to the integration of Ukraine into the EU. Is it possible to be working on it now, when the war is still raging? It is credible to be discussing reforms, and the meme says we have to align the shape of banana and whatever. Is it really this time?
Well, certainly this is the time to talk and act for the future of Ukraine. And the future of Ukraine is going to be decided in 2 dimensions. First of all, it's absolutely crucial. Ukraine has to win the war. It's up to the Ukrainians to win this war, and they are doing a remarkable job, showing love for freedom, independence, sovereignty, and simply human dignity every day. And they are pursuing this path with enormous determination and heroism. But for them, in order to win this war as soon as possible, because I suppose this is something you are alluding to, it's necessary to help them as much as we can, militarily, politically, diplomatically, and economically. And quite frankly, The President Fiala has just said that the time of passivity, what was the time of being passive? Passivity in Europe is over. And I consider it as the motto of our thinking and acting today. The time of passivity is over, which means that we have to support all of us, everyone in the transatlantic community and among all the like-minded countries. We have to support Ukraine as much as we can and as quickly as we can. And what bothers me also in the European Union, that there are countries that are trying to do as little and as late as possible. So this is the time of saying farewell to being passive. This is one thing. And the other thing concerning the future of Ukraine, certainly Ukraine has done its best in order to enjoy the reputation of the most committed country to European values. It's not enough to talk about values, core principles on which our living together is based. They are fighting for this, and they are paying the highest price. So they are up to the challenge the war is posing to them. Now the question is whether we in the European Union are also up to this challenge. And what I mean here is the issue of the accession of Ukraine and also of certainly of Moldova, Georgia, and so on. And we, the European Union, have committed many, many mistakes in the accession process of Western Balkans. It has lasted too long. We were not straightforward with them, with our partners in Western Balkans, and they are paying the price, and we are paying the price for that, because the countries from outside of our world of values are interfering there. And it's high time to draw the lesson from this experience. And what is necessary is a very transparent, very dynamic accession process for Ukraine. And if we manage to arrange it, not in the next decades, but in a couple of years, this is the most important issue, but something that we can do for the future of Ukraine. And if these two things are going to be achieved, I'm absolutely sure about the future of this brave country, because we will gain a very important friend and partner within the EU borders, who now they are freedom fighters, they are freedom protectors, because they are protecting us, and in the future they are going for decades to come. They are going to be freedom promoters. There is no doubt about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wopke, Netherlands, typically, when the debates about enlargement in the EU very often is the critical voice of that. And we can understand that. And especially with Ukraine, there's a tragic history connected to that. How is the current situation changing your view?
You are already
how to convince generally the typical Western Europe, which is, and I understand that, maybe a little bit skeptical and want to adhere to certain nice, small, strong union. How to talk to you, and what should Ukraine prove to, for example, to Netherlands that it's ready and fit and to be member of the EU?
Well, thank you very much, Jan, and thank you very much for organizing this.
Yeah.
And in my view, answering the set of questions that you posed, it starts with acknowledging that we, all of us, have been hit by an earthquake in February of this year. You never know exactly what historians will write when we are a couple of years down the line, but one thing is for sure, there is a clear schism and there will be a clear before and after. And many might say that actually it was a wake-up call in slow motion, and that there were many signs along the road that actually explained to us and that we should have seen that geopolitics never died, that imperialism was always there, but there is clearly a before and an after. And you can actually also see that by the response of the European Union and of friends from across the globe. Because if you see what the European Union and other friends of Ukraine have done in terms of supplying weapons, in terms of humanitarian aid, in terms of harboring refugees, even the countries that might have been skeptic on harboring refugees in general. If you look at the amount of sanctions that the European Union and others have come up with, if you look at that whole set of measures that we have been taken, I think that is without any precedent. And it is certainly something many in this room and across the globe wouldn't have expected from the European Union, including Vladimir Putin. I think there is a tremendous miscalculation in the Kremlin about the fighting spirit of Ukraine, the ability and the will to defend itself, but also in the whole Western response to it, which has been much more accurate, much more coherent, and much more united than many, including the Kremlin, would have expected. And my view is that we do need to continue to help out Ukraine as long as it takes on each and every one of these dimensions. And of course, some of them are linked to the European Union, such as sanctions. Others, like weapon supplies, are much more linked to individual countries. But it is with reason that I think all the countries here around the table and many others have done more than their fair share because they see and they acknowledge what is at stake. And to me, that has also been at the heart of the decision of all European countries to say that even though it is without precedent, even though we have looked at the accession process differently in the past, geopolitics is back, and geopolitics should be taken into account when talking about enlargement. And it is that very acknowledgement that has enabled us to make this decision, again, without precedent and with all sorts of difficulties potentially along the road, to allow Ukraine this status. I think it is a wise decision, and it is much more than simple symbolism. It acknowledges the geopolitical situation and the danger that we face on our continent. It pays tribute to the situation in which Ukraine currently is, and it shows that we will see this through, that there is a joint future for the European Union and Ukraine, and we will do whatever is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 5 minutes, so I propose that we do one quick round. Dmitro, Ukraine was granted the candidate status with several conditions. How do you see the fulfillment of these conditions?
Listen, our full life is about conditions. We got used to it. Yes, we don't. More, the only thing that we want is to be treated fairly in the assessment of the implementation of conditions. We have done, out of 7 The polite word for conditions is recommendations. So out of 7 recommendations put forward by the European Commission in connection to granting the candidacy status to Ukraine, we have already implemented 1 in full. We appointed the anti-corruption prosecutor. We have launched the selection procedure for the head of the Anti-Corruption Bureau. Believe me, we are very much committed. We know what is at stake, and we are very committed to implementing these recommendations and to asking the next question, not what is next, but when is next. And I think we all deserve a little bit of optimism here, because traditionally, when someone speaks about Ukraine's European integration, the natural way is to always add a second sentence. Well, it may take years, it may take a lot of time. And what if it doesn't? 3 months ago, no one believed Ukraine would be a candidate country. We were hearing the same story. Well, it will take time, many years, until we reach there. And by the way, I would like to commend, of course, all countries who supported this decision, but in particular Germany and the Netherlands who supported the candidacy. And it was a milestone decision for them. So now we are candidates. We are moving, we are implementing the recommendations. And if we are ready to act fast, the European Union has to act fast too. And as you said, maybe it will not happen in a night, the EU membership, but it may happen in 2 nights, not in years. So that's our plan.
Couple of nights.
Whatever you mean under nights. Yes.
How do you see, Annalena, the discussion in the EU about the beginning of the accession process? Is it a formality? Is it a big thing?
Well, I think it's a huge thing, the whole step that Ukraine will become, and this is not a time question, this is Ukraine will become an EU member, full stop. And I think we have to make clear, because we are in a time of war, and we also on this panel, I mean, we agree on 99% here on the panel. And we have, like, maybe this is human, but this is probably politics, always find then this 1% where we disagree. And this is life. I mean, in every family we disagree. Nobody is like 100% agreeing on anything, even what you want to have for dinner in a family. But in this time, I think it's very important to see where we agree. And this is really tremendous, not only for Ukraine, but for the European Union. I mean, like, 2 years ago, there were probably half of the room would have said, so what is the reason for joining even the EU? I mean, this is a project, I mean, for peace, but peace is given anyhow. And now we see, no, peace doesn't fall from the sky, unfortunately not. We have to defend it, and we have to fight for it. And we see how important values are. And we also see, and we have learned that again in Germany, that interests and values are now different stories. They are one side of the same coin. There are 2 different sides of one coin. This all belongs to each other. I think this is really the moment we have to also acknowledge what we have achieved, even in times of war. We have achieved what Putin feared the most, unity in the European Union. We have achieved that Ukraine will become an EU member. A couple of years ago, the discussion was, no, Ukraine cannot become a member of the European Union. Finland and Sweden will join NATO, even though the countries didn't want to join NATO. Now they are joining NATO. And to also tell this story, even though it's hard and even though it's totally different in Ukraine, but to say, if you're breaching with fundamental rights, with international law, so heavily as Russia did, then you get the opposition from most part of the world, and not only from the EU, not only from G7, not only from NATO, but from 141 states. And I think it's also not a story from the West against Russia. No, this is a story from those who believe in international law, who believe in human rights, who believe in liberty, and most of them also in democracy. And it will take as long as it needs, but in the end we will win. And I think this is where we have to focus on these times, and not where we disagree, but where we agree and fight for it all together.
Bobke, your country is also renowned with justice and with the court. And in Ukraine now the huge injustice is taking place. So how that plays, how that fits into the overall picture of bringing Ukraine into the Europe, into the EU?
You know, I think one thing is very clear also from this panel is that we are all committed to make sure that Ukraine wins this war. That is first and foremost, that is top of mind. However, we do know that the most horrific things have been taking place and are still taking place. And Annalena and I were there a couple of months ago. We talked to people in some of the villages that were hit the most, and the stories are truly breathtaking. If you think about the rape of women, the rape sometimes of men, children's toys to which booby traps are being attached, and what that does to the civilian population, to me one thing is crystal clear. We cannot let that happen, and we will not let that happen. And we do know it always takes years to make sure that justice will be done, that typically you can only touch a fraction of all the crimes that have been committed. But let's make sure as an international community and as a European Union and with everyone who believes in the universality of human rights and everyone who wants to stand up against these type of crimes, that we bring the people who did this at a level, at a military level, but also at a political level, that we bring them to justice. We owe that to the victims, and we owe that to future generations.
Last but not least, question to you, Zbigniew. How would you define the success of Ukraine in this war?
So far or in the future? The success of Ukraine?
Success of Ukraine in this war.
Well, success of Ukraine in this war is more than clear. First of all, Ukraine has to regain occupied territories. Then it has caused Russia to become so weak that it would never think about any kind of continuation of its imperial policy, which means that each and every neighbor of Russia will finally feel free from the danger of being invaded. And the third point, even more important, we know from Russian history very well that when Russia faces a military defeat, this kind of experience starts a profound discourse, inner discourse within Russia. This took place after the Russian-Japanese War. This took place after the failure of the Russian invasion in Afghanistan. First, it was the revolution of 1905, which changed Russia considerably. And after the defeat, after the failure in Afghanistan, perestroika took place. So Russia, I still naively, perhaps romantically believe that Russia still has a chance to go back to its splendid but very narrow tradition of the decabrists, of Andrei Sakharov, and so on. And if the Ukrainian victory can lead to that, we will all win this war. The free world will win this war. Thank you.
So, thank you very much to all of you. Time is up. Thank you very much for taking part in this conference, and see you on the other occasions. Thank you, Annalena.
It was over-optimistic on my part.
Thank you,
Perception becomes reality, as I said.
Thank you.